Because she was unsure if her husband saw a colleague's silhouette in the video call, the woman hurriedly asked her colleague to drive her home after hanging up. However, her husband, sensing something was amiss, kept calling her on the way. Afraid of revealing any clues, the woman chose to ignore all the calls. Little did she know that this action would lead to her demise. As the two passed by a gas station, the woman decided to buy a cup of coffee to stay alert. Just as she was about to pay, she realized there was no clerk on duty. In her hurry to leave, she placed the money on the counter. But when she looked up, she was stunned to see that the shelves in front of her were covered in blood. Realizing that something was terribly wrong, the woman just wanted to leave this dangerous place as quickly as possible. At that moment, a sudden bullet hit the woman's arm directly. Before she could react, another bullet struck the door. The woman hurriedly endured the intense pain and crawled behind a shelf to hide. Thinking she was safe, she took a breath, only to have another bullet explode the snacks above her head. The woman quickly looked around, and upon noticing the bullet holes in the glass, realized she was still in the killer's line of sight. She hurriedly adjusted her position and loudly called out her colleague's name. The colleague was engrossed in watching a video on a cold window, unable to hear the woman's cries for help. The woman saved herself. She tore her jacket to stop the bleeding on her arm and made a run for it. When the woman peeked out, she heard the other party fire a shot, indicating they had her firmly in their sights. At this point, the woman no longer dared to make any rash moves. Then she suddenly remembered that her phone had fallen at the doorway in the chaos earlier. Only by retrieving her phone could she call for help from Lao Hei, so she slowly moved her body towards the phone. However, the other party had already seen through her intentions but did not rush to take action. The reason the assassin did this was to make the woman completely despair. Sure enough, the woman was so frightened that she could only hide behind the shelf, motionless. Just when the woman was at a loss, a man's voice suddenly appeared in the room. The woman looked around as if she had found a lifeline, only to realize it was the intercom on the counter speaking. That direction was right within the sniper's range. If she rashly went over, it would be a dead end. To divert the assassin's attention, the woman struggled to grab 2 bags of chips from the shelf. After calculating the sniper's shooting timing, she repeated her trick and threw out the second bag of chips. After a series of maneuvers, the woman finally managed to get the intercom. She incoherently told the other person that she was currently being targeted by a sniper and pleaded with the man to call the police and help her. Unexpectedly, the other person just asked where the store clerk was, completely disregarding the woman's plea for help. At this moment, the old man in the car noticed that the woman hadn't come out, so he prepared to go into the store to look for her. Unexpectedly, as soon as the old man stepped inside, he was taken down by a bullet. The woman, already terrified, could only watch helplessly as the old man was shot in the head. The woman's mind went blank in an instant, and she could only suppress her inner fear to keep herself calm. At this moment, a voice came through the walkie-talkie again. Knowing this was her only chance to survive, the woman hurriedly picked up the walkie-talkie and asked the other party to help call the police. Upon hearing that someone had been shot, as soon as these words were spoken, the woman was instantly dumbfounded. She never imagined that the person sniping at her had been chatting with her all along. Clearly, the other party was just toying with her, intending to plunge her back into despair after giving her hope. At this moment, he noticed the circuit breaker switch not far away. He knew the assassin was definitely watching him at this moment. If he could turn off the lights in the store, he might not be as passive as he was now. The woman immediately grabbed a few batteries, trying to hit the switch and cut off the power, but after several attempts, she still didn't succeed. Just when the woman was at a loss, she accidentally discovered that the shelves could be moved. So she quickly lay on the ground, locked the wheels, and then pushed the shelf to use it as cover, slowly moving towards the corner of the wall. The killer will not give him this opportunity. Went out, the entire convenience store was suddenly plunged into darkness, and the assassin, having lost his sniper sight, also paused his shooting. The woman hid under the cash register to catch her breath, but suddenly discovered the cashier's corpse. At this moment, the woman suddenly thought of using the other person's phone to call for help, but after fumbling for a long time, she couldn't find his phone. After seeing the old-fashioned landline phone on the table, the woman hurriedly bent down and fumbled her way over to it. However, after she entered the number, she realized that the phone line had been cut at some point. Fortunately, she found some first aid tools that could temporarily relieve the pain in her arm. Next, she took a tube of adhesive from the shelf, endured the severe pain, and applied it to the wound, then pressed hard to seal the bullet-pierced wound. Afterwards, she found a piece of mirror, taped it to a metal rod, and used it to observe the killer's position. What puzzled the woman was that the killer had suddenly gone silent. At this moment, a car arrived at the gas station. The driver, seeing the mess in the convenience store, loudly called out the clerk's name, as if they knew each other. The woman hurriedly told the clerk that he was already dead, and said that if she wanted to survive, she shouldn't shout. If the killer on the billboard saw her, her life would be in danger. Then she asked the man to call the police for help, but the man said he left his phone in the car. The man initially thought it was just a farce, but when he saw the clerk's body, he suddenly burst into tears. At this moment, the woman suddenly began to suspect him, because when he just entered, the killer didn't shoot at him, and ever since he came in, the killer not only didn't shoot, but the walkie-talkie also stopped talking. The woman, deeply terrified upon reflection, silently took down a hammer and prepared to attack at any moment. But no matter how the man explained, the woman was unwilling to easily believe his words, because who would show up here at 3 in the morning? unless he retrieves his phone to call the police and prove his innocence, which is also the best way to clear up the misunderstanding. And the man also thought this was their chance to get out of the predicament, so the two of them planned together, with the woman using a flashlight to distract the killer's attention. The man moved to the side of the vehicle to get his phone. Seeing no movement at the billboard, the man relaxed, and just as he reached out to grab his phone, it was only after hearing the gunshot that the woman believed the man was not a killer, but there is no remedy for regret in this world. Moments later, a voice came through the walkie-talkie again. It turned out that the reason the killer neither shot nor spoke was to make the two of them suspect each other. You put about to it, didn't you? The killer incessantly mocked the woman for her foolishness. In order to survive, the woman could only chat with him while looking for an opportunity to escape. Taking advantage of the other party's complaints about social injustice, the woman looked at the umbrella in front of her and came up with a bold idea. She then opened the umbrella, creating a path leading to the back door. Seeing the woman's intention, the killer did not rush to act, but instead gave her 30 seconds to escape. Fortunately, the woman managed to escape to the back door at the last second, but the lock on the door became a major problem. Then the woman grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and started hitting the lock fiercely, but even when she was out of breath, the lock showed no signs of budging. At this moment, outside, suddenly, the sound of police sirens came from outside. The woman realized this was a perfect opportunity to escape, so as the police car approached, she took the risk to run out from the front door of the convenience store. After hiding along the way, she got close to a car, but by then, the police car had already driven away. Just as the woman was unlocking the car, she discovered that the killer immediately started shooting. Original Sound ran back to the convenience store, clutching her head in panic, but was still shot in the thigh. As she entered the door, the woman endured the pain and moved herself to a safe area. To prevent excessive blood loss, she picked up a bottle of disinfectant and poured it directly onto the wound. Back door was her only chance to escape. Then she found a hacksaw on the shelf and returned to the back door, intending to saw through the lock. However, after sawing for a long time, she only managed to leave a shallow mark on the lock and accidentally cut her hand, causing it to bleed profusely. One after another, the repeated failures left the woman completely devastated. She picked up the walkie-talkie and started cursing at the killer. However, just as the two were mocking each other, another car drove up outside. Seeing this, the woman hurriedly dragged her lame leg to move outside. The old man who got out to refuel, the old man who was running on the oil, soon realized something was wrong. When he got closer, he found a body in the car. Inside the car, the elderly woman saw her husband collapse on the ground and thought he had suddenly fallen ill. She hurriedly got out to check, only to find him covered in blood. At this moment, the woman shouted loudly for her to leave. But the old woman had barely taken 2 steps when she suddenly remembered her granddaughter was still in the car. But just as she hesitated for a moment, the killer decisively pulled the trigger. The intention was clear. The elderly man, still alive, sorrowfully crawled towards his wife, but the next second, the ruthless killer pulled the trigger again. Witnessing the tragic death of 2 innocent elderly people right in front of her, the woman could no longer remain calm. She rushed out of the convenience store and hurled insults at the killer, but just as she was ready to face death, she noticed a girl poking her head out from inside the car. The girl lowered her head and looked around for her grandparents. The woman hurriedly ran back into the store, signaling the girl to stay in the car. But the girl had already noticed her grandparents on the ground. Just as the woman was pleading for help from the killer, she turned around to find the girl had already come to her grandmother's side, trying to wake her grandma. Seeing this, the woman hurriedly wrote, "Return to the car," on a napkin with a marker. Although the girl didn't understand what was happening, she obediently returned to the car. Just as the woman breathed a sigh of relief, the killer proposed a deal. The prepared woman wrote a sign on the paper, telling the girl to leave this place, then stuck it on the glass, urging her to leave quickly. But as soon as the girl stepped out of the gas station, she froze in place because it was pitch black outside, so dark that she couldn't see her hand in front of her face. The frightened girl turned around and came back the next second. Fortunately, the killer still had a shred of humanity left. He did not choose to harm the little girl, but the next second, he slowly revealed his true self. Clearly, he intended to personally deal with the woman. Seeing this, the woman hurriedly pulled the girl towards the back door to escape, not forgetting to pick up the hacksaw from the ground. As the killer got closer and closer, the speed of the woman's hands also began to increase. Fortunately, luck was on her side, and the woman miraculously managed to saw through the door lock. Then she hurriedly took the girl inside to hide. But due to the power outage in the convenience store, the shutter door leading outside couldn't be activated. Helpless, the woman had to hide the girl first and instructed her not to come out no matter what happened. Next, she inserted a crowbar into a steel pipe, forming a makeshift spear. When the assassin slowly approached with a gun, the woman hiding behind the shelves took advantage of the assassin's momentary distraction and directly pierced his side with the spear. But the woman was no match for the assassin. She was quickly overpowered and knocked to the ground. Just as the assassin was about to shoot the woman, she reached for the assassin's mask. Unexpectedly, the assassin panicked, and the woman seized the opportunity to grab a sharp object nearby and thrust it into the assassin's arm. The assassin, in pain, instinctively let go of the gun, giving the woman a chance to quickly dash over and pick up the gun. First, accompanied by 2 gunshots, the woman also fell to the ground. Thinking the woman was taken out, the assassin used his access to open the shutter door, but then he suddenly remembered the little girl. Not long after, he found the girl under the stairs. Just as he was about to remove his mask, he was caught off guard by a sudden full-force blow and immediately lost consciousness. Then the woman dragged him under the hydraulic press and pressed the switch without hesitation. Just as the woman was trying to lift the assassin's hood to see who he was, the assassin unexpectedly regained consciousness and tightly grabbed the woman's hand, refusing to reveal his true identity. During their struggle, the hydraulic press came down heavily on the other person's head, with the sound of bones cracking. Soon, the person's head was crushed into pulp. Looking at the unharmed girl in front of her, the woman, having lost too much blood, slowly closed her eyes. Until the end, the woman never figured out who wanted her dead. Although at the end of the movie, the killer's refusal to remove the mask even in death might lead the audience to believe that the killer is the woman's husband, Han Chuang thinks this assumption is completely wrong. Her husband was thousands of miles away during their video call, so how could he have arrived here in such a short time? Moreover, the killer mentioned that the store clock was his wife, and that this was because she betrayed him. Additionally, the movie describes the character as an antisocial person, so the ending is just the director adding a touch of mystery to the film. This is my personal interpretation. Those who have seen the original film can discuss it in the comments section.